Holy smokes, everyone. A key indicator for inflation has just hit a 30-year high. What you have to know is we're at a critical point in time right now. Everywhere, food prices are skyrocketing, housing prices are skyrocketing, fuel prices are skyrocketing, but you're having our officials, our government officials, and also the central banking officials saying, don't worry, everything's just temporary. Well, every time the government says, don't worry, it's just temporary, it's exact time we must fear the most. We're continuing to see the cost of everything skyrocket. The cost of living for the poor and the middle class is becoming harder and harder. Our purchasing power is getting destroyed. But of course, the Federal Reserve is saying it doesn't even exist. The inflation's not even real. It's just going to be a little blip and then it's going to go away. They're refusing to admit that they're the ones that are creating this problem. So in this video, I'm going to be going over the latest data that proves inflation is continuing to rise, that it won't be temporary, and why we must hold them to account. Because if we don't hold them to account right now, you're going to have families that can't afford to have 3 good meals a day. You're going to have people that can't afford to buy even a used car and afford to travel anywhere they want because fuel prices will be too much. And also the homeless crisis that is happening in America right now is going to become worse and worse, and you're going to see unrest and chaos in the streets. Okay, everyone, let's not waste any time. Let's get straight into it. So looky here, everyone. Key inflation indicator posts biggest year-over-year gain in nearly 3 decades. That's right, the biggest gain in nearly 3 decades. And you just had the Federal Reserve Chairman, Jerome Powell, he testified, he took an oath. And in that conference, he had the audacity to say, we're going to wait till there's actual inflation, till inflation is actually here. Well, can you see, everyone? Biggest increase in 30 years, and still Jerome Powell is lying and spitting in our face. He just must think the American people are so stupid or they're so lazy, they won't even question our supreme lords. The serfs will just keep working on the Lord's estate and we won't even bat an eye. People, please, I know you're all very intelligent. Our community here knows exactly how the financial system works. They know exactly how the Federal Reserve private bank works. So please share this information with your friends and with your family. This is very important because if we don't get this information out there, if we don't educate our family and friends, well, they're just going to let inflation run rampant until it's too late, until people can't afford food and they can't afford the basic essentials, and then they'll just blame it on supply chain issues. So it says here, a key inflation indicator that the Federal Reserve uses to set policy rose 3.4% in May from a year ago. This is the fastest increase since the early 1990s, the Commerce Department reported Friday. And you know what's funny? Why the Federal Reserve likes using the PCE inflation indicator? That's because it's the lowest out of the 3. You got the PPI, the Producers Price Index, that's 6.6% year over year. You've got the CPI, that's around 5.2% year over year. And now you've got this PCE, and the Fed goes, oh yeah, that's the one we use. That's the best out of all of them. Well, why do they say that? It's because it's the lowest. But even this, the lowest inflation indicator, is still nearly double the Federal Reserve's mandate of price stability. And what have we got now? Their mandate is low unemployment and price stability. We've got high unemployment, we've got crappy employment, crappy jobs, and we've got rampant inflation. So they're doing a very bad job. And I hope Jerome Powell gets a sack and we get a new Fed chair, which I'm sure nothing will change. But we just need to tell him he's doing a terrible job. His term's coming up, I think it's the end of this year, early next year. And we'll see who the new Fed chair is going to be and if they'll actually make any changes. Because what you have to know is, everyone, they change the way they report inflation. Like I said, we'll have a look at shadow stats here. Based on the 1980s way they used to record inflation, we have inflation around 13%, which to me sounds a lot more realistic. And then they changed the way they record inflation again in the 1990s, but even that's over 8%. And even the official CPI data is at 5%. But you have Jerome Powell saying, well, you know what? I don't really think it's that high. It's not that bad. It's all right. It's just because of this. It's just because of that. It's not because I increased the money supply 27% in 1 year. Because look at this, everyone. The M2 money supply, which of course they discontinued because they can't let us peasants know the truth. We can see here that over the past year, it's completely skyrocketed. And of course, they say this has nothing to do with inflation. Well, look at this chart here. I beg to differ. You can see that the red line is the CPI and the black line is the M2 money supply. And what have we seen here? We're seeing a huge spike in the M2 money supply. It hit a peak of 27%. And now look at the little red line here. Inflation is spiking at the exact same rate, the exact same trend that the M2 money supply is growing. So we can see it is 100% correlated, but Jerome Powell continues to lie. He's committing a crime against the American people. And, asking the Fed if what they do causes inflation is like asking the mob, do they do illicit activities? Of course, the Federal Reserve is going to say that what we do has nothing to do with inflation. All right, back to the article. So though the gain was the biggest since 1992, it met the Dow Jones estimate and market reacted little to the news. Well, you know why? It's because they got Jerome Powell with his big money printer behind him. And I think the markets know now that the Federal Reserve is going to back them 100%. The Federal Reserve is using the stock market as a monetary policy tool to stimulate the economy because everyone's retirement's in the stock market. And it seems more and more likely that the Federal Reserve is going to continue to spin more and more lies, and they're not going to lift interest rates. They're not going to react at all. They'll just find some other excuse. They're going to cross their fingers and close their eyes and hope that this inflation problem goes away. Do you think prices are going to go back to what they were last year? No way, Jose. They're going to stay higher. Now, they may fall a little bit, but they still will be much higher than last year. For example, if a cost of something goes up 100% and then it falls 50%, the Fed will be like, see, I told you inflation was temporary. Well, you're missing the point. Prices are still 50% higher than they were a year ago. And of course they always exclude the two most important things, or two of the most important things, including, that's what they always say, volatile food and energy prices. They are volatile, but they're volatile in an upward trend. So including volatile food and energy prices, the PCE index actually rose much higher, 3.9% for the year. And most of the inflation increases came from energy, with prices rising 27.4%. So that's right, your fuel costs are going up 27%, but no, there's no inflation here, people. Nothing to see here. Food just gained 0.4%. Well, again, annualized, that's 4.8%. That is nearly 3 times the Federal Reserve's mandate. And, this is now compounding at a higher rate. And we all know how powerful compound interest is. And listen to this, everyone. The headline increase was the biggest since August 2008, just before the worst financial crisis hit and sent inflation on a path lower that would last throughout the longest economic recovery in US history. Well, you know what I think? If we've had the longest bull run in history, we've had the biggest bull run, the biggest bubble in history, well, what should come after that? Well, obviously, the biggest crash in history. So listen to this. Inflation has spiked recently amid a confluence of factors. They include supply chain disruptions, in which manufacturers of key products have been unable to keep up with escalating demand that has come with the economic reopening. Well, of course, no mention of the M2 money supply increasing like this chart here. Completely, just censoring that. Don't even talk about it. Nothing to do with that. Soaring real estate prices have also played a factor, as lumber costs have soared, though the trend has reversed lately. So yes, lumber has crashed, but it is still much higher than it was a year ago. And here's the latest scam they're saying, people. Finally, the current numbers are influenced by what economists call base effects, or skewed comparisons with a year ago when government restrictions put that much of the economy in limbo. And so those base effects are likely to dissipate when the June numbers come out next month. Okay, so this is another scam they're saying it's all because of base effects from last year. But if we look at the month-over-month data here, we can see that the CPI rose 0.6% in May. So there's no base effect from last month. Last month was actually higher. So it is still growing at an annualized pace of over 7%. So no, base effect is an issue. It's not because of supply chains. That is playing a factor, supply chains, but it is because of this. You increase the money supply, the Cantillon effect, you devalue the currency, price of everything go up. They're also not mentioning the stimulus checks. You may think, you got a free lunch. Well, there's no such thing as a free lunch, people. They're giving all this stimulus, they're printing all this money, they're saying there's going to be no consequences. We are seeing dire consequences here. And if they don't get it under control now, this could lead to one day hyperinflation. And we're seeing more and more countries experience high inflation or hyperinflation, like Venezuela, Argentina, Turkey, Iran. But of course, the famous last words, it's not going to happen here. Well, if you do exactly what all other countries have done, exactly what all other empires have done, what led to their collapse, it is only a matter of time before your country reaches the same fate. So everyone, that was just a quick update on the latest inflation numbers. And if you can't tell, I'm mad as heck. I'm sick to death of these corrupt officials, these politicians, these central bankers. I see the lies they're doing. It is so obvious. It is so obvious what they're doing. I see they're sacrificing the people. They're sacrificing the poor, the middle class, but they're lying. They're saying, we got to keep printing, we got to keep buying $120 billion of government bonds so you can have a job. We've got to keep giving this low interest rate loans to primary dealers, to hedge funds, to go out there and buy up all the homes. We got to keep the stock market inflated so that when I retire, because look, Jerome Powell, Janet Yellen, they're going to be retiring soon. They don't want their retirement portfolio, the nest egg, to be down 50%. So they're going to want to keep pumping it up, and also for all their mates. And also, you've seen Jerome Powell's got caught going to parties with Jeff Bezos. So there's obviously some conflicts of interest there. And this really just gives me a dire outlook for the future. And this is why I'm out here trying to communicate with people, trying to educate people on the financial system so they become aware. Because if we don't spread the truth, if we don't inform our friends and family, we're going to have a very grim future of where inequality just gets worse and worse. The poor will get even poorer. Even if you got a full-time job, it won't be enough to survive. And you're going to have to work 2 jobs. Your wife or your girlfriend will have to work 2 jobs. And, we'll just become glorified slaves. Now, for all my loyal viewers and subscribers still watching, you're awesome. If you haven't already, please tap that like and subscribe button. I'll keep you up to date on the latest that's happening with inflation, with the stock market and the economy. And if you're bored, I'll put up some other videos here. I'll see you all there.